start with that relatable struggle. Why is it so easy for some people to stick to that 5 a.m. gym routine or, you know, effortlessly shrug off the temptation of the snack cupboard,
Right.
while the rest of us are locked in this daily exhausting battle with the snooze button or that immediate desire for comfort?
Yeah, it's a daily fight for a lot of people.
We often frame this as uh, a simple lack of willpower, but is that fair? Is that really what's going on, or is it something, I don't know, much deeper about how we fundamentally perceive our existence, our health, and our place in the world?
That tension you're describing between the inner belief and the outer action, that is precisely what we are diving into today. We are taking a deep, almost forensic look at two interlocking personality traits, locus of control and self-control. And we're going to see how they don't just influence our daily micro decisions, but how they physically and mentally shape our health outcomes across a massive representative population.
And our source material for this is particularly compelling because it bridges two seemingly disparate worlds.
It really does.
On one side, we have the rigor of modern social science. We have empirical data from a major Australian academic study, the Household Income and Labor Dynamics in Australia survey, the HILDA survey.
A huge data set.
And it ties these psychological traits to real-world measurable health outcomes like smoking rates, physical inactivity, obesity, and just your general well-being.
And then, on the other side, we pivot dramatically. We go from quantifying behavior to understanding, well, spirit. We'll be looking at philosophical and spiritual texts exploring concepts like altruism, the disciplined journey of the Noble Eightfold Path, and this profound state of equanimity, or upekkha.
So the core mission today isn't just to summarize these sources, but to really understand the common thread running through them.
Exactly. We want to find the point of convergence. Where does modern science, which is, obsessed with quantification and measurable behavior,
Right, with the numbers.
where does that meet ancient wisdom, which is focused on inner peace, non-attachment, and conscious action?
We're looking for that shared ground that defines true, beneficial internal agency and ultimately long-term human well-being. You've brought us a fascinating stack of sources, so let's unpack this. Okay, so let's start with the first one, locus of control, or LOC. Now, if you've heard this term before, you might already have a sort of basic understanding, but it's so critical to establish the precise definition that Rotter gave it way back in 1966.
It is, because this concept is really your fundamental, deeply ingrained belief about who or what is ultimately driving the bus of your life.
Driving the bus, I like that.
Yeah, it's a good way to think about it. LOC is defined as the expectation or belief about the extent to which events in one's life are due to one's own actions and characteristics.
Right.
And we call that an internal locus of control.
Internal, got it.
Versus the belief that life events are due to external forces like fate, luck, or powerful other people. And that, of course, is an external locus of control.
So if I have a high internal LOC, I believe that my successes and my failures are primarily the result of my own effort, my choices, my persistence.
That's it.
The classic, I make things happen.
Precisely. And the literature, it repeatedly shows that operating from that belief system is incredibly beneficial.
In what way?
Well, it's consistently associated with improved physical health, greater adoption of healthy behaviors, because, why would you try to quit smoking if you don't believe your effort actually matters?
That makes perfect sense.
And just overall superior psychological well-being. But conversely, if you lean toward an external LOC, your worldview is dominated by the idea that things happen to me.
The victim mindset, almost.
It can manifest that way, yeah.
Yeah.
It often translates into feelings of helplessness, reduced motivation to change, and reactive rather than proactive behavior.
So to measure this foundational belief across thousands of individuals in a huge population survey like HILDA, you can't just ask a single question, right? It's more complex than that. What specific tools did they use to quantify this often subconscious internal belief system?
Right, they need something robust. They employed a very well-established tool in social science and economics, the Perlin and Schooler's Mastery Scale from 1978.
The mastery scale.
Yes. This instrument consists of 7 items, 7 statements, designed to capture an individual's sense of mastery over their environment, which is the academic proxy for locus of control.
Can you give us a sense of what kind of agreement they're measuring? What does a question on that scale actually look like?
Absolutely. Individuals are asked to indicate their level of agreement with a statement on a scale, from strongly agree to strongly disagree.
Okay.
So some items are designed to capture that external feeling, things like, I have little control over the things that happen to me, or I often feel helpless in dealing with the problems of life.
You can feel the weight of those statements.
You really can, but crucially, the scale also includes statements capturing the internal viewpoint. So a statement like, what happens to me in the future mostly depends on me.
I see. So it's balanced.
It's balanced. And then the researchers aggregate and average these scores so that a higher final score represents a stronger, more internalized sense of control.
And for our audience who, likes to know the data is solid, what about the reliability of this scale? I mean, using it in a massive data set like Hilda, does it hold up?
That's a critical question, and the answer is yes. The statisticians confirmed that this scale was extremely reliable.
How do they measure that?
They report it using a measure called Cronbach's alpha. For this data set, the alpha was excellent. It registered at 0.84.
And what is that number, 0.84? What does that actually mean for you, the listener?
It means that the 7 items are highly consistent in measuring the same underlying construct, that sense of agency. We can trust these findings across thousands of people. It's a very solid foundation to build the rest of the study on.
Okay, that's LOC, the belief. Now we move to the second distinct piece of this puzzle, self-control, or SC. If LOC is the engine, maybe SC is the steering wheel.
I like that analogy. It's the practical capacity for delayed gratification. Bowles and his colleagues defined this in 2011 as the ability to override automatic impulses to achieve those longer-term, often abstract goals.
So this is the doing part. This is the moment-to-moment decision.
Yes. Self-control is the operative mechanism of resistance against temptation. It's your capacity for self-regulation, which involves, monitoring your own behavior, evaluating it against some standard you have, and then actively regulating it.
So it's not hitting the snooze button. It's not opening the social media app when you know you should be working, or not reaching for that second cigarette.
All of those, yes. And we know from years of research, including major longitudinal studies like the one by Moffitt and her colleagues in 2011, that higher SC is independently associated with a healthier, more successful life trajectory.
And that's across the board, right? Not just health.
Across everything, from better finances to better relationships to, yes, better health.
So how did the Hilda survey measure this practical discipline?
They used another well-regarded tool, the Brief Self-Control Scale, or BSCS, which was developed by Tangney and colleagues in 2004. This is a 13-item battery that really captures this capacity for discipline.
And what does that scale look like in practice? What are people reporting on?
Again, it's about how well statements describe them. So examples would include agreeing with a statement like, I am good at resisting temptation, or on the other side, agreeing with something like, I often act without thinking.
And the reliability on this one.
Amazingly, the Cronbach's alpha mirrored the LOC scale exactly. It was also 0.84.
Wow.
So we have 2 highly reliable, but, and this is the key, distinct measures of agency.
This brings us to a crucial point the sources really emphasize. Why spend so much time stressing that LOC and SC are distinct concepts? I mean, they sound so fundamentally linked.
They are linked, but they are not the same thing, and separating them is absolutely vital if you want to design effective interventions. Conceptually, they tap into different realms of our personality.
How so?
Well, if you think of the big 5 personality traits, locus of control relates more strongly to neuroticism.
Neuroticism? That's interesting. Why that one?
Because people high in neuroticism tend to worry more, experience anxiety, and feel more vulnerable. Now, if you believe external forces are controlling your life, an external LOC, that belief feeds directly into your neurotic anxiety.
Ah, I see.
You feel like a boat being tossed by a storm you can't steer. It's terrifying. But if you have an internal LOC, you feel empowered to manage the inevitable stressors of life, which acts as a buffer against that neurotic distress.
Okay, that makes sense. So where does self-control fit in?
Self-control relates much more strongly to conscientiousness.
Which makes perfect sense. It's the trait we associate with discipline, organization, and goal-directed behavior.
Exactly. Self-control is the behavioral output of conscientiousness. It's the mechanism that translates the desire for order into actionable, persistent effort. In the past, some researchers would measure self-control using LOC scales or vice versa, but that conflation just muddies the waters.
Because you could have one without the other.
You could. You might be highly conscientious and able to exert self-control, but if you believe the effort is ultimately futile, if you have that external LOC, you won't even bother trying.
And this brings us back to the theory put forward by people like Bandura back in 1977 and Rosenbaum in 1980. They essentially theorized that the belief system the LOC, must underpin the ability to regulate the SC.
They did. They argued that the motivation to engage in self-regulation, to resist that immediate reward for a future gain, is fundamentally dependent on a person believing that their self-control will actually yield results.
So if I'm trying to lose weight, and I secretly believe my genetic fate or just bad luck will make me fail anyway.
You won't expend the exhausting mental effort of resisting that piece of cake. Why would you? The belief in your own agency is what powers the motivation for self-regulation.
So, did the empirical data from the Hilda survey, which measured both of these things simultaneously, finally confirm this theorized link in a massive population?
It confirmed it robustly, and it did so in two really interesting ways. First, they ran something called an exploratory factor analysis on all 20 items, the 7 for LOC and the 13 for SC.
What does that do?
It's a statistical method that looks for underlying patterns, and the results proved definitively that they are empirically distinct. The items loaded clearly onto two separate, clean factors. They are not measuring the same thing.
But they are related.
Absolutely. That was the second finding. The correlation was positive, it was moderate, and it was statistically significant.
What does that look like in numbers?
The specific finding was that a 1 standard deviation increase in internal locus of control is associated with an increase in self-control by about 0.36 to 0.37 standard deviations.
Now, that might sound a little technical to some listeners. What does that mean in plain English?
It means that these two are deeply intertwined. The more you believe your actions matter, the greater your capacity for discipline actually becomes. This huge set of population-level data finally validates decades of psychological theory. The belief fuels the action. And that brings us to the core contribution of this Australian Hilda study. Because they measured these two distinct yet related traits at the same time in this large representative sample, they could move beyond just saying they're correlated.
Right.
They could actually examine the interaction between them specifically through what we call mediation and moderation. And this provides the first clear empirical evidence of how these dual forces interact to explain health outcomes.
Okay, before we get into the complex mechanics of mediation, let's just establish the overall baseline. What happens when you simply have a strong internal LOC? What's the general effect?
Generally, almost everything is better. An internal LOC is consistently associated with better physical health, a lower risk of chronic conditions, better mental health, and just higher general well-being.
And they had multiple ways of measuring that, I assume.
Oh, yes. They used the SF-36 health questionnaire, which is the standard. People with internal LOC reported higher self-rated health, higher scores on the physical component summary, or PCS, and just greater satisfaction with their own health. They're also less likely to engage in a lot of harmful behaviors.
Let's pause on the mental health aspect for a moment. I remember the sources citing a massive effect size on reducing psychological distress.
Yes, the beneficial effect size on reducing psychological distress was huge. It was approaching 96%.
96%. That's incredible.
It's a critical insight. It suggests that simply having a bedrock belief that you are the primary agent in your life, that your future depends on you, acts as this powerful, almost immediate buffer against anxiety, depression, and psychological stress.
So that effect is there even before you perfectly execute all your healthy behaviors.
That's the key. The belief itself provides a deep resilience. The ability to attribute a failure to, say, changeable effort rather than unchangeable fate is a fundamental protective mechanism against feeling overwhelmed by life.
Wow, 96%.
Right.
So the belief in agency is perhaps the most significant single psychological mechanism for managing the mental load of life's uncertainty.
That is certainly a very strong implication from this data.
Now, you mentioned one surprising exception to the healthy behavior pattern: alcohol consumption. An internal LOC was actually linked to more drinking.
It was, and this is a fascinating nuance that shows this isn't just about being good. An internal LOC was associated with an increased likelihood of weekly alcohol consumption and also excessive drinking, which they defined as 3 or more drinks per occasion.
That's completely counterintuitive if we just assume LOC drives all healthy choices.
It is.
So why do you think that is? I mean, does the belief in control lead to a kind of overconfidence? I can handle it.
That's one of the leading theories, and it's consistent with other research that's been done. People with a high internal LOC may feel they're more capable of managing the consequences of drinking, or they might just be more involved in social activities where alcohol is present, precisely because they are proactive, self-assured socializers.
So their agency leads them into more situations where drinking is the norm.
Exactly. They feel they can handle it, which leads to greater consumption. It shows LOC is about agency, and that agency can be applied to socializing or relaxation goals, not just your health goals.
That's a great example of how these traits aren't moral judgments, they're mechanisms of action.
That's a perfect way to put it.
Okay, let's shift back to the primary mechanism you mentioned, mediation. This is where self-control acts as the bridge.
Right.
So if LOC is the cause and better health is the outcome, the mediation hypothesis states that LOC causes SC, and then SC, in turn, causes the better health.
That's the hypothesis, which was formalized by Clark. The idea is that self-control is the key pathway.
And how did the researchers test this?
It's a clever statistical approach. First, you measure the effect of LOC on health outcome directly. Then, you rerun the test, but this time you statistically control for self-control. You add it into the model. Now, if the original beneficial effect of LOC drops significantly when SC is added to the model, it proves that SC is mediating the relationship. It's the how.
It's the channel through which LOC does its work.
Exactly.
And what do they find?
They found that when self-control is added to the model, the beneficial effect of locus of control was significantly reduced in almost all cases.
Wow.
This reduction is the smoking gun. It confirms that self-control mediates at least part of the relationship between believing you are in control and actually being healthy.
So the belief, the LOC, gives you the permission or the motivation to act. But the actual discipline, the SC, is the necessary execution tool.
You've got it.
Where is this mediation effect the strongest?
It was strongest for outcomes that are directly related to resisting specific immediate temptations. In other words, things like addictive behaviors and instant gratification.
Like smoking.
Exactly like smoking. For smoking behavior, self-control mediated a staggering 72.2% of the total effect of locus of control.
72%.
Yes. So this means that if you believe you are in control, over 70% of the reason that that belief leads you to quit smoking is because that belief fuels your actual daily resistance, your self-control.
That makes perfect sense. Quitting smoking is an intensely self-regulated impulse management task, minute by minute.
It is, and the findings related to weight management were even more telling. Self-control mediated over half of the effect on the likelihood of being obese, 54.5%.
But the source material notes an even more extreme mediation percentage for simply being overweight, 122.5%. Now that number is confusing. How can mediation be over 100%? What did that actually mean for the listener?
That 122.5% is one of the most critical and frankly surprising findings in the entire study. It speaks directly to the complex reality of human behavior.
Okay, break it down for us.
When a mediation percentage exceeds 100%, it means that self-control is acting as a suppressor of the direct, unmediated effect of locus of control.
A suppressor. That sounds completely counterintuitive. Does that mean locus of control on its own might actually be slightly harmful when it comes to weight?
Potentially, yes, a tiny bit. Let's break it down with an analogy. Imagine you have a very high internal LOC. You believe you are completely in control of everything.
Okay.
This can lead to a little bit of overconfidence. You might think, I'm in control so I don't need to track my calories that closely, or I'm in control so one small indulgence won't really hurt me. This overconfidence, that's the direct effect of LOC, could subtly increase your likelihood of being overweight.
But then self-control comes in and corrects for that overconfidence.
Exactly. The indirect path, the one that goes from LOC to SC to health, is powerfully positive. The overall beneficial effect is only maintained because the discipline, the SC, is so potent that it overcomes the minor detrimental effects of the overconfident belief, the LOC, when it's all alone.
So the 122.5% confirms that for weight management, you need the capacity for self-regulation to make your belief in control actually effective?
Yes. The self-control suppresses the potential hubris of a high locus of control.
That is a profound aha moment. You need the humility of discipline to make your self-belief productive? Did this powerful mediation hold true for mental health?
Not to the same degree, which is also interesting. The mediation was present, but it was much smaller, ranging from about 9.0% to 13.5% for mental health outcomes and general well-being.
So what does that tell us?
It suggests that while discipline certainly helps your mental health, the belief in agency itself, the LOC, provides a massive non-behavioral influence on your mental state. Just like we noted with that near 96% reduction in distress. You feel better simply by believing you can manage things, even if you sometimes fail at the actual execution.
And finally, there was that one notable exception. SCA did not mediate LOC's relationship with physical inactivity.
That's right. Initially, the researchers found no significant association between self-control alone and physical inactivity. And this suggested that mere discipline wasn't enough to get people moving. But this exception sets the perfect stage for our next point: moderation.
This is where it gets really pivotal. Moderation asks the question, does having a strong internal LOC actually strengthen or amplify the beneficial effects of self-control?
Right.
In other words, is the effort more worthwhile if you believe the effort matters?
And the theory, again from Rosenbaum, is a resounding yes. If I am going to exert the exhausting mental effort required for self-control, I need to believe that that effort will translate into a different outcome. If I have an external LSE, expending SC is, well, it's illogical. Why sacrifice today if fate decides tomorrow anyway?
So the belief acts as the amplifier for the action. Did the study find evidence of this powerful synergy?
Absolutely. The interaction term, that's moderation effect, was statistically significant. It confirmed that an internal LSE was found to amplify the beneficial effects of greater self-control, particularly for all physical health outcomes.
All of them.
Yes, including the physical component summary score, general health, and health satisfaction.
So just to be clear, someone with high SE and high LOC gets a greater health benefit from their discipline than someone with high SC but a low LOC.
Precisely. The discipline is more potent, it has a bigger payoff, and the physical inactivity finding, which was previously a non-finding in the mediation section, became crucial here.
How so?
They discovered that self-control mattered for physical inactivity only when it was coupled with an internal locus of control.
Wow.
If you had the self-control but you lacked that foundational belief, the discipline did not translate into better activity levels.
That is the ultimate confirmation of the theory. You only exert the effort if you believe the effort matters. This means if you're out there training your self-control through, I don't know, cognitive behavioral techniques or mindfulness or just budgeting, you are missing a massive efficiency gain if you don't simultaneously address the fundamental belief system that gives that self-control its meaning.
And that's the implication for policy and for personal development. It's clear. The greatest gains, what the study calls the great efficiency gains, come from interventions that improve both people's self-control and their locus of control simultaneously. It's the synergy of belief and behavior that unlocks superior long-term health.
So, modern psychological science has given us this clear empirical link. A strong internal belief in agency fuels our capacity for self-regulation, which is key to our health. Now, let's pivot entirely. We're going to travel across millennia and continents to see what ancient philosophy and spiritual traditions say about managing the inner self. And we're going to start with what seems like the ultimate external focus: altruism.
We shift from the quantified results of the Hilda survey to this selfless ideal. Altruism, defined as selfless concern for the welfare of others, appears, at first glance, to be the opposite of self-control focused on your own health goals.
It seems completely other-focused.
It does, yet its practice requires immense internal discipline and a profound control over the ego.
The sources immediately show the deep historical importance of this concept. This is not a modern invention. The concern for selfless giving spans the ancient and medieval periods. It was studied intensely by early Christian, Jewish, and Islamic philosophers, and later by figures in Western thought.
Yes, and listing those names: Augustine, Aquinas, Benedict, Cyril, Bonaventure, Occam, it isn't just a historical footnote.
Right.
It demonstrates that the question of whether humans are capable of purely selfless action, or if all actions are ultimately self-interested, has been central to moral philosophy for thousands of years. The sheer weight of this tradition suggests that understanding unconditioned giving is central to understanding the highest possible human condition.
To illustrate this unconditioned internal approach, the source material offers a really powerful anecdote from the Sikh tradition, involving a man named Bhai Kanhaiya during the period of Guru Gobind Singh in the late 17th century.
This story is often used to demonstrate seva, which means selfless service. During a fierce battle against the Mughal rulers, Bhai Kanhaiya was observed moving across the battlefield.
And what was he doing?
He was offering water and aid not just to the wounded Sikh soldiers, but critically to the wounded enemy troops as well.
And some of the other Sikh warriors complained about this. They argued he was wasting resources in supporting the enemy. To them, it was a failure of allegiance.
It was a conflict between the external conditions, us versus them, friend versus enemy, and an internal perspective, which was universal divinity.
So what happened?
Well, when Guru Gobind Singh called him forward and asked him what he was doing, Bhai Kanhaiya's explanation was simple and profound. He said, "I was giving water to the wounded because I saw your face in all of them."
Seeing the Guru's face, The divine spark in the enemy, that's an ultimate internal locus of control overriding all external conditions.
It is. And the guru's validation when he said you were practicing what you were coached in the house of the guru essentially confirms that this unconditioned care is the highest form of conduct.
This profound impartiality is the perfect bridge to our next concept, equanimity, or upaka, in Theravada Buddhism.
It is. And much like LOC and SC are often confused, equanimity is frequently misread in Western contexts as simple indifference or just emotional numbness.
Like the emotional zero point between joy and sorrow.
Exactly. And that interpretation makes it sound passive, almost like disinterest. But the deeper spiritual definition implies extreme engagement and effort.
So it's not a passive state at all.
Not at all. Upaka is derived from the Pali roots upa, which means closely or carefully, and ika, which means seeing or looking at.
Huh.
Therefore, the true profound meaning is careful consideration or conscious, impartial consideration based on the evidence of reality. It's a state of deep, non-reactive awareness that is achieved through deliberate effort.
So it's not about turning off your feelings. It's about viewing the world and your emotional responses through a lens of supreme, steady wisdom.
Exactly. Equanimity is frequently described as being synonymous with wisdom, or panya. It is the state of mind that considers all beings consistent with karma, their actions, and their resultant fate, without attachment or aversion to the outcome.
You see things clearly.
You see things clearly without distortion from your own preferences or your own ego.
Now, the great commentator Buddhaghosa categorized 10 kinds of equanimity, which sounds exhaustive, but our sources narrow the focus for us.
They do. While all 10 are important, 3 principal types are deemed most significantly interrelated with the Noble Eightfold Path, which is the path toward purification.
So which 3 categories help us understand this mental state in a practical context?
Well, first we have Chalangapeka. This is the 6-fold equanimity towards the objects of the 6 senses.
Okay, what does that mean?
It means maintaining non-attachment, whether you encounter a pleasant or an unpleasant sight, sound, smell, taste, touch, or even a mental object, a thought. This level is characteristic of an arahant, a fully enlightened being.
That's essentially perfect sensory regulation, the ultimate form of self-control.
Then the second is Brahmaviharubeka. This is equanimity as the last of the 4 divine abodes.
The 4 divine abodes.
Yes, alongside loving kindness or metta, compassion or karun, and sympathetic joy or mudita. You cultivate boundless love and joy for others, but you balance it with equanimity so that you don't suffer when they suffer or become unduly attached to their success.
That makes the connection back to altruism so clear. You give selflessly, but you maintain your internal balance so that the act of giving doesn't deplete you.
Absolutely. And the third type is Vedanupeka, which is equanimity as a type of neutral feeling. This is the close sensation in the middle of 2 extreme feelings, like joy and grief. It's a cultivated, objective neutrality that observes feelings without being swept away by them.
So all 3 of these highlight that equanimity is a highly cultivated, active state of impartial awareness. It's not simple laziness or indifference.
Not in the slightest. It's a pinnacle of mental discipline. Given that equanimity is this cultivated state, a spiritual goal, it raises the crucial question, how is it achieved? And the answer lies in the foundational practice of Buddhism, the Noble Eightfold Path.
And this path was first announced in the Buddha's first sermon, the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta, as the middle path.
The middle path, yes.
It's designed to navigate between 2 extremes, the extremes of sensual indulgence, which is called base and profitless, and self-mortification, which is painful and also profitless. The text refers to it as the only path, the Ikayano Mago, for the purification of mind.
It's the ultimate blueprint for sustainable inner control. And the path is functionally grouped into the 3-fold training, or trisika.
The 3-fold training.
Yes, and this provides clear areas of focus for your mental and spiritual development.
So why did the Buddha insist on these 3 groupings? Why not just 8 separate things?
Because they represent a synergistic, cyclical approach to liberation. You need ethical behavior, moral conduct, to calm the mind enough for deeper concentration. You need concentration to gain insight, wisdom. And then wisdom reinforces your ethical conduct and guides your efforts. They feed into each other continuously.
A virtuous cycle. Let's break down those components and maybe link them back to our modern psychological concepts of control and agency.
Great idea. The first grouping is wisdom, Pinya. This includes right view and right intention.
Okay.
This is the intellectual and experiential knowledge gained from reflection, study, and mental development that understands the true nature of reality, suffering, and the path to its cessation. This is the philosophical equivalent of our locus of control.
How so?
It's the foundational belief system that guides all subsequent action. It's your map of reality.
I see. Then we have moral conduct, sila.
Sila encompasses right speech, right action, and right livelihood. These are the ethical rules designed to prevent harm, both to yourself and to others. Things like abstaining from killing, stealing, or malicious speech. By regulating your external actions, you eliminate the mental turmoil that results from wrongdoing. This sets the stage for inner stability.
And finally, concentration.
This covers right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. Now, while right concentration is often associated with the deep meditative states, the jhana samadhi is a broader concept.
Broader how?
It includes momentary concentration and the cultivation of the calmness and insight necessary to stabilize the mind. This is where the practical, moment-to-moment self-control lives.
So the research on equanimity in the path, it sought to understand which specific path factors are the strongest contributors to achieving and maintaining upekkha.
Yes, and they found a clear hierarchy. Of all 8 path factors, the 3 principal aspects that significantly supported equanimity were in order. Number 1, right effort.
Right effort.
Number 2, right concentration. And number 3, right view.
Right effort ranking highest overall is incredibly significant when we relate it back to the Hilda study. It suggests that the active balancing of energy, the self-control element, is paramount in achieving this impartial, non-reactive state.
It creates a powerful parallel. The scientific finding was that belief, the LOC, empowers discipline, the SC. The ancient finding is that right view, which is wisdom or belief, guides right effort, which is discipline. And right effort is the most powerful tool for attaining equanimity.
It's the application of balanced effort that stabilizes the mind.
That's it.
Can we detail that link between right effort and equanimity a bit more?
Yes. Right effort is specifically the exertion of balanced energy, the avoidance of either reckless, frantic striving or sinking into laziness and laxity.
The middle path of effort.
Precisely. And it strongly supports virupekkha, which is specifically the equanimity of energy, the balanced mental attitude toward exertion. It also supports parasutthupekkha, the purified equanimity experienced during the 4th jhana or deep absorption. The path is telling us, balanced, persistent self-control leads directly to profound, non-reactive peace.
And right view, the belief system, was third.
Right view is absolutely essential because it supports the wisdom-based forms of equanimity. It significantly supports vipassanapekka, which is equanimity resulting from the development of insight, and brahmaviharabhapekka, equanimity as a divine abode. Without the correct understanding of reality, the right view, your effort, your SC, would be misdirected. It wouldn't lead to liberation.
Let's make this practical for the listener. How does the conclusion summarize the daily work of cultivating the path to maintain equanimity?
The conclusion frames it as maintaining discipline in 3 dimensions of action. And these are essentially daily self-monitoring and regulation mechanisms designed to steer you clear of those 2 extremes of indulgence and suffering.
So what are the parameters for bodily equanimity?
This is your external physical self-control. It means avoiding wrongful actions. Abstaining from taking life, abstaining from taking what is not given, so stealing, and abstaining from sensuous misconduct. By maintaining physical harmlessness, you prevent the karmic distress that destabilizes the mind.
And what about verbal equanimity?
This requires conscious self-control over your communication. It means refraining from 4 types of negative speech: false speech or lying, malicious speech like slander, harsh speech, and just senseless chatter. You must choose truth and harmony.
That is a subtle but powerful form of self-control. By regulating what you say, you regulate your inner state and your relationship with everyone else.
It's huge. And finally, the ultimate form of self-regulation, mental equanimity.
Okay.
This is steering clear of incorrect thoughts, which touches so deeply on what locus of control addresses. It involves consciously avoiding covetousness, greed, and desire, ill will, aversion, and anger, and wrong views, misunderstanding reality. This is the basic daily practice for cultivating the path.
It's a process of.
It's a process of consciously substantiating value in a way that maintains an equality between pleasant and unpleasant feelings when your senses make contact with the world. It is the realization that true control comes from accepting the nature of phenomena rather than trying to force it to be otherwise.
We move now from this disciplined psychological control and the rigorous path of equanimity to what feels like the ultimate outward expression of that inner peace. Unconditional love, or Rakrai enjoying Kai.
Yes.
This is where the non-attached, non-judgmental stability you've developed through equanimity finds its ultimate selfless direction.
The spiritual definition of unconditional love is it's immense. It is love defined as seeing inherent, unchangeable value in yourself and in others. It involves sacrificing, forgiving, and sharing with others without conditions. It's described as innocent, pure, clean, and free from the messy entanglement of the ego and fear.
The power of this love, according to the sources, is defined by its absence of attachment and expectation. It does not require expect, anticipate, possess, attach, interpret, judge, or desire anything in return.
And just think about the immense internal locus of control required to achieve that. To love without desire means you have completely mastered the need for any external validation.
You're free.
You are free from ego, fear, anxiety, or doubt. You are so internally regulated that you do not need the other person to be or do anything for your love to exist.
And its positive effects are described in almost transcendental terms. It's an immense power, a precious gift that fills and overflows the individual with deep happiness, warmth, safety, and this limitless feeling that connects and links all beings as one.
It's really the ultimate antidote to the psychological isolation of modern life.
But in a world that is so dominated by transactional relationships, I will love you if. This concept is incredibly challenging to integrate practically. I mean, how can you practice unconditional love without sacrificing yourself entirely or just becoming a doormat?
This is where the distinction is vital, and it ties right back to the psychological concept of agency. The sources insist that unconditional love must start with loving yourself first, with self-acceptance and self-worth.
You cannot pour from an empty cup.
You really can't. You cannot fully extend this boundless love until you yourself are whole. If you are operating from a place of deficit, seeking to be filled by the love you give, then the love is conditional by definition. It requires reciprocation. Self-love is the foundation that ensures the love you extend is truly limitless and non-dependent.
And that foundation of self-worth is what permits the setting of strong boundaries, which is often mistakenly viewed as a conditional act.
Exactly. Unconditional love does not mean enduring every toxic relationship or suffering due to negative energy or abuse. That would be a failure of self-love.
Right.
Instead, it requires the wisdom to set good, healthy boundaries and to move away from relationships that are not, as one source puts it, vigorous or that cause you pain. And crucially, even when you're moving away, you maintain understanding, acceptance, and letting go non-attachment of the other person's journey.
It sounds like the equanimity developed through the noble path is the prerequisite for practicing this kind of love in a sustainable way.
It has to be.
You can accept the reality of the situation and the other person's behavior without being pulled into suffering yourself.
That is the ultimate convergence. It involves respecting the autonomy and the life path of the other person. Love should not be a pressure for someone to change to meet your expectation. It is this steady support for their genuine growth, even if that growth takes them away from you.
This is what some spiritual sources refer to as moving from 3D to 5D love.
The contrast is stark. 3D love is described as being rooted in conditions, fear, possession, and ego, the whole "I need you to complete me" narrative.
Yeah.
5D love is described as a state of mind where everything is one. It's powered by unconditional love, truth, and faith, moving beyond the illusion of separation. It is the practical realization of that equanimity ideal.
And the practical path to achieving that 5D state requires constant inner work, particularly in addressing past emotional pain.
Central to this internal liberation is forgiveness. Forgiveness is described as essential for creating quality relationships and perhaps even more importantly, for your own self-liberation. It's the conscious decision to let go of anger and past pain, to surrender the need for retribution, which is what allows you to step toward true emotional freedom.
And this non-judgmental acceptance is the hallmark of unconditional love and is reflected beautifully in nature.
It is. Unconditional love is characterized by non-judgment and acceptance, reflected, as the sources note, in the simple analogy of the sun shining equally on all things, regardless of their nature. We see this contrast illustrated powerfully in the real-world analogy of dogs versus cats.
The steady loyalty of the dog versus the conditional choice of the cat.
The dog's loyalty is presented as love regardless of treatment. It symbolizes the steadfastness of true unconditional love. It stays even when we are flawed or inconsistent. The cat, conversely, chooses to stay based on benefit or condition.
Right.
And this analogy reminds us that true unconditional love is an investment in self-worth and inner agency that completely eliminates the need for external proof or reciprocity. It means your love is not a resource that can be depleted by the other person's choices. Hashtag tag tag outro.
This has been a profoundly connecting deep dive, linking the rigorous quantification of modern psychology with the the transcendent wisdom of ancient philosophy. We started by defining two distinct psychological traits, and we finished by finding their ultimate spiritual expression.
The key convergence point is the supremacy of the internal state. Locus of control, that belief in agency and self-control, the practical discipline, are separate but so strongly linked. That foundational internal belief is the necessary fuel for our capacity to regulate ourselves effectively.
And we learned that self-control acts as the key mechanism linking that internal LOC to better health outcomes, especially in crucial areas like physical health, weight management, and fighting addiction behaviors like smoking. And crucially, the belief system, the LOC, actively amplifies the power of the discipline, the SE.
We then saw how ancient practices, like cultivating the Noble Eightfold Path, aim to achieve equanimity, or upaka, a state of non-attached conscious neutrality. This state is built upon wisdom, Panya, and maintained through disciplined effort, famali, mirroring our finding that belief powers action.
And unconditional love embodies this highest state, requiring self-acceptance as its non-negotiable foundation, practicing non-expectation, and possessing the wisdom to set necessary boundaries and let go without ever ceasing to care.
We've established that believing you have control over your life amplifies your self-control, leading to better outcomes. So here's a final thought. If the ancient practice of equanimity is described as a state of deep, non-judgmental awareness connected to wisdom, does this suggest that true, sustainable internal control is achieved not through forcing an external outcome, but through the deep, clear acceptance of what is?
And if so, perhaps the ultimate long-term strategy for self-control is simply to cultivate the foundational belief that locus of control in its most profound form. The steadfast, non-attached wisdom that sees value in everything, regardless of condition. Something for you to mull over as you navigate your own quest for balance and well-being.